It never crossed my mind that I would find myself abandoned in the chill of solitude by my own daughter. It was beyond my wildest dreams that the man she chose to marry would rob me of my dignity during my most vulnerable time, and that she would stand by and allow it to happen. Yet, unbeknownst to them, life had one final card left for me to unveil, and as I played it, the world around me transformed. Are you prepared? What you are about to encounter transcends mere storytelling. It is a profound reckoning. Share your location in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more captivating tales like this one. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Margaret. At the age of 58, I found myself reflecting on the concept of unconditional love, particularly in the context of family, a belief I held until recently. My life has been intricately woven around my husband and our daughter, Amanda. Each dish I prepared, every celebration I orchestrated, every penny I tucked away was dedicated to them. When my husband succumbed to cancer last year, it felt as though the very ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Yet, I reassured myself that Amanda remained by my side. I still had my daughter with me. I parted ways with the house my husband and I had meticulously crafted from the ground up in Cedar Park. Merely a stone's throw north of Austin, countless memories linger, countless nights spent awakening, yearning to hear his voice echoing from the kitchen. Amanda and her husband, Chad, graciously extended an invitation for me to stay with them for a time. At the very least, it was Amanda who did. Chad hardly lifted his gaze from the screen of his phone as I settled in. I endeavored to maintain a sense of calm, avoiding any disturbances. I remained in my modest chamber at the rear. I prepared meals, tidied up, volunteered for errands, striving to be of assistance while also keeping a low profile. Yet, Chad possessed an uncanny ability to evoke a sense of unworthiness within me. His eyes perpetually bore a trace of irritation, as if I were a splinter lodged beneath his skin. It began with the little details. He would undoubtedly roll his eyes at the mere sound of my inquiry. He would switch the TV channel while I was engrossed in a show. Once, I caught him murmuring the word freeloader as he brushed past me in the hallway. I attempted to persuade myself that I had misunderstood, yet within the depths of my being, I recognized the truth. I had not. Amanda? Silence enveloped her words. I would seek her out for support for a single word, for anything at all. Yet she consistently downplayed it. He emphasized, she would remark. The challenges at work have been quite demanding. I swallowed my shame and remained silent. Isn't that the essence of motherhood? Yet on that night, that singular night, it broke me apart. Seated around the dinner table, we gathered together. I prepared a chicken pot pie, his absolute favorite. Amanda scrolled through her phone, while Chad casually sipped his beer, as was his usual habit. The stillness weighed upon the air. Suddenly, Chad lifted his gaze and remarked, perhaps it's time we cease pretending this is merely temporary. We do not operate as a charity. Amanda stood still, her body rigid with surprise. My gaze was fixed upon him. Could you clarify what you mean? He wore a sly grin. How much longer is this meant to continue? You are not engaged in work. Your input is lacking. We have obligations to meet. We never agreed to take on additional mouths to nourish. My breath hitched, my heart raced with fervor. I glanced at Amanda, a sense of urgency gripping me. Amanda? She averted her gaze from mine. Perhaps it would be wiser, she murmured, to seek something more secure for the benefit of all. For the benefit of all. I refrained from screaming. I chose not to engage in a dispute. I rose from my seat, made my way to my room, and began to gather my belongings. 2 pieces of luggage. That was the entirety of what remained in my existence. I found myself devoid of tears as I packed my belongings. Only after did the tears arrive. As I lingered outside their building, the wind gnawed at my coat, a stark reminder that I was adrift, with no destination in sight. Amanda did not accompany me outside. Chad made no effort to feign anything. For an hour, I found myself perched on the curb. The battery of my phone had succumbed to a state of complete depletion. My heart was also. I recall the sensation, a profound realization of what it means to be rendered invisible. That evening, I found myself settling into a motel. the sort where the wallpaper curls away from the walls and the vending machine devours your coins. I found myself wide awake, gazing at the ceiling, pondering how everything had transformed into such an icy stillness, contemplating the reasons behind this profound sense of abandonment. As dawn broke the following day, I reached out to Amanda with a message. I comprehend. My heart is yours. Forever. Silence echoed back. The following week, I dispatched another. Then yet another. Celebrations of life. Minor updates. Stillness. 3 months slipped away. Every day seemed to stretch endlessly, surpassing the one before it. I endeavored to submit applications for various positions. Anything at all. Yet, there seemed to be no interest in employing a mourning widow in her late 50s, especially one with a gap in her recent work history. I contemplated the idea of cleaning houses or babysitting, yet my body no longer moved as it once did. The solitude, the air felt thick, oppressive, as if it were closing in around me. And even more troubling, the shame. I had poured my heart and soul into that girl. How could she so effortlessly abandon her stance? One evening, while sifting through a box of cherished family mementos, I sought to connect with something deeper. Everything, it has been discovered. The aged pages of my mother's diary. It had been years since I last turned its pages. Perhaps not at all. Yet an inexplicable force drew me toward it. I perched on the edge of the motel bed, flipping through the pages, and that's when I stumbled upon it. A title. Profound Reality. A revelation that transformed it all. The moment is etched in my memory. My hands trembled. My heart pounded with fervor. In that moment, I transformed from merely the mother who had been cast aside. I existed as a different person altogether. For the first time in months, a smile graced my lips. They stripped me of everything, yet they remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. Following that night, the days merged into one another, resembling gray watercolors diffusing on a damp canvas. The motel room was permeated by the scent of stale air and lingering cigarettes from afar. The incessant drone of the vending machine just beyond my door transformed into a melancholic serenade of surrender. I remained silent. There were nights when tears escaped me, though not every evening bore witness to my sorrow. Yet, in those moments of vulnerability, my weeping was a hushed affair, a deep, shuddering cry that reverberates through your entire being, yet remains locked away, stifled by the absence of solace from another. On the 4th day, I reached out to Amanda once more, a straightforward communication. I'm doing fine. I simply wanted to inquire about your well-being. Silence lingers. 2 weeks later, I made another attempt. Simply a heart emoji. Silence reigns. I reassured myself that she was preoccupied, that eventually she would return, that perhaps Chad was distorting the truth. Yet, as the weeks passed, that hope began to decay within me. My finances were dwindling. I sought out part-time employment, exploring grocery stores, front desks, and even a diner nestled by the highway. Yet, I found myself either deemed overqualified or not quite the right match, a polite euphemism for being too old and too weary. On a quiet evening, I found myself seated on the floor of that room, meticulously sifting through the sole box I had brought along, which contained nothing but items other than clothing. Within the confines of a dusty memory box from the house lay some old photos, a handful of letters, and nestled at the very bottom, a diminutive tome, bound in supple leather, the diary of my mother. I found it quite astonishing. I have no recollection of having packed it. I nearly returned it, yet the texture of the leather against my fingers compelled me to hesitate. The flickering flame of the ancient lamp cast a warm glow over the side table as I turned to the first page. Her handwriting remained unchanged from the notes she once tucked into my lunchbox during my childhood. Circulated. Impressive. Perpetually inscribed. Initially, it was just the usual fare. The atmosphere outside. Place of worship. Grievances regarding the cost of groceries. However, upon reaching the entry from June, I found myself captivated. He visited once more today, expressing a longing for a different reality, one where I could be his wife. Yet, he carries the weight of a family, a thriving business, and a reputation to uphold. Margaret shall remain blissfully unaware. She must remain oblivious. I hold on to the hope that one day she will grasp the depth of my love for her, despite the circumstances of her arrival, born from a blend of error and longing. I perused it on 2 separate occasions. Yet, she must remain oblivious to the truth. My breath hitched in my chest. I turned the pages with a swift motion. One entry follows another. Suggestions, remembrances, conferences held within the elegant confines of hotels, minor monetary transactions. She attempted to decline, yet found herself in dire need. She referred to him only by his initials, never uttering his full name, HJS. Yet, another entry emerges. February. He mentioned that he had taken steps, that in the event of any misfortune befalling him, he would guarantee Margaret would be provided for. A fragment of his creation. It shall remain unofficial, naturally. The risks are simply too great. Yet he made a promise to me. A bond of confidence. A missive. He mentioned that his attorney, Mr. Goldstein, would have the answers. That name. It struck me with the force of a gut-wrenching blow. Goldstein. I had encountered it previously. After 2 days and countless online searches on the motel's communal computer, I finally uncovered his whereabouts. Leonard Goldstein, a former estate lawyer now enjoying retirement. It remains cataloged under a private company in Dallas. I refrained from making the call. I was unable to. My hands quivered excessively. In its place, I dispatched a letter. A genuine, handwritten letter, detailing my identity, my mother's legacy, and pleading for a dialogue. After a fortnight, a call came through to me. I recall the tremor in his voice when I spoke my mother's name. He was familiar with her, not solely in a professional capacity, but also on a personal level. I always wondered if you'd reach out someday, he remarked. You must witness this for yourself. The following morning, I boarded a Greyhound bound for Dallas. My suitcase lay half-packed, a precaution against the possibility that he might reveal himself as a scam artist. As I stepped into the tranquil office, surrounded by aged tomes and an even more ancient stillness, the reality of the moment washed over me. He presented me with a sealed envelope, faded to a pale hue, delicate. It came from Harold James Sterling, the visionary behind Sterling Energy, a leading oil company in Central Texas, a figure I had encountered in the faded pages of newspaper clippings throughout my existence. A gentleman accompanied by his loved ones. A legacy, an enduring legacy. The missive was duly addressed. To my beloved daughter, Margaret Louise. I found it challenging to absorb the entire piece in a single sitting. Before I reached the second paragraph, tears welled in my eyes. He confessed to it all, the clandestine romance, the pangs of remorse, the unspoken affection, and ultimately, the vow. Upon my passing, I have arranged for a segment of my personal assets, discreetly kept from my estate, to be entrusted to you through Mr. Goldstein. You are my kin, and while I lacked the courage to embrace you in life, I now embrace you in death. Mr. Goldstein deftly slid a folder across the table. Within the confines of financial records lay bank accounts, a modest investment portfolio, ownership papers, and titles, culminating in a total value exceeding $1 million. I fixed my gaze on the papers, then shifted it to him. This is real, I whispered. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. It belongs to you, and it always has. My heart raced, not due to the allure of wealth, but because, for the first time in my existence, I felt selected, acknowledged. I remained silent, composed, and unyielding. I remained still, as silent as a breath, allowing the truth to envelop me like a long-desired downpour. In the stillness of that night, within the confines of my motel room, sleep eluded me. I gazed at the ceiling as I had for countless months, yet this time, a smile began to unfurl on my lips. They believed they had cast me aside. They believed I had reached my limit, yet they were utterly unaware. I wasn't shattered. I was merely beginning my journey. I delayed my return to Austin. A profound change had taken root within me, irrevocably altering my essence. I was more than just Margaret, the overlooked mother. I had transformed into a different version of myself, a person who had been deceived throughout their existence, at last uncovering the reality. After what felt like an eternity, I found myself, for the first time in months, perhaps even years, free from the suffocating weight of shame. Clarity filled my lungs with each breath. I lingered in Dallas for a few extra days, meandering through neighborhoods, savoring coffee in quietude, observing the tapestry of life unfold around me. Individuals who had not been cast aside as I had. For the first time, I found no envy within me. I delved into their intricacies. I pondered which of them donned smiles that concealed their sorrow, who had faced betrayal, and who had fought their way back from the shadows of obscurity. Leonard Goldstein did not merely bestow upon me the inheritance. He granted me the gift of time. It is time to reflect and absorb. It was time to grasp the significance of what I now possessed in my hands. It was not merely riches. It was dominion, and I found myself utterly at a loss regarding how to wield it. Yet, sorrow often transforms into a powerful force when one has endured humiliation repeatedly. Upon my return to Austin, I chose not to revisit the motel. I secured a temporary abode in the heart of downtown, just a stone's throw from South Congress. Immaculate, contemporary, serene. A realm that Amanda and Chad would scarcely envision me being able to afford. I started to change my style, refined and intentional, subtle yet distinct, quietly redefining the essence of invisibility, the sort of unseen presence that allows you to pass through thresholds. I began exploring YouTube videos focused on investing, property market, agreements. I acquired the language of business, not out of a desire to construct an empire, but rather to safeguard my own interests. I shall never find myself devoid of power again. It was at that moment that I discovered it. A unit apartment building in East Austin lay hidden within the depths of a real estate auction site. A touch worn, yet fundamentally robust. Where is it situated? The precise complex in which Amanda and Chad resided. I found myself seated, gazing intently at the screen. The heart races. The property was categorized as distressed, with the owner having defaulted on their taxes. Auctions are set to take place in a fortnight. I acted without a moment's pause. With the assistance of Mr. Goldstein, I established an LLC, a discreet shell company. I completed the necessary paperwork, moved the funds, and submitted the bid. Revenge was never on my agenda. Not quite, but I intended to seize the one domain they believed they governed. The auction arrived and departed. I emerged victorious, silently, in accordance with the law, completely unnoticed. In an instant, I became the owner of the very building they called home. They expelled me with nothing but 2 suitcases and a feeble justification. In that moment of utter vulnerability, they chose to humiliate me. I recall the moment I sat at my desk, gazing at the deed and softly murmuring, "Let's see how Chad feels about paying rent," to a mouth he couldn't nourish. A month later, the letters of notification were dispatched to all tenants. The reassessment of rents would take place. Terms have been reviewed in their simplest form. What about Chad and Amanda? The revised figure was 3 times greater. Not twice, threefold. The value of the market, in addition to any outstanding fees. He must have burst forth in a fit of fury. I was aware without the need for sight. The fury was palpable, reaching me from afar. Yet, it transcended mere financial concerns. It revolved around pride. Chad was a man who craved a sense of mastery over his surroundings, and I had just yanked the carpet from beneath his feet. In hushed stillness, Amanda attempted to reach me 2 days following the notification. It marked the first occasion she extended her hand since the evening I departed. I allowed it to slip into voicemail. "Mom, I'm not sure if you've heard, but there's something strange happening. Our rent has increased significantly. Chad is unraveling. I'm at a loss, truly. May we engage in a conversation?" I chose not to reply. This was not a matter of revenge. This discourse revolved around the concept of gravity. They had to grasp the gravity of their decisions. As I passed the building under the cloak of night, a sense of intrigue washed over me. Their lights illuminated the surroundings. Shadows danced furtively behind the curtains, their movements elusive and mysterious. Amanda moved back and forth, her steps quick and restless. Chad's voice rang out, his silhouette unmistakable against the backdrop. I observed them for a brief moment, then continued on my way. Part of me felt empty. A sense of vindication washed over me. Yet a part of me still ached profoundly. For even in this moment, with the knowledge I possessed and the treasures I clutched, I would have sacrificed anything to be welcomed once more into that realm. Not to the apartment, but to the very core of my daughter's being. Yet I understood that such a thing was beyond reach. Not at this moment. I chose to remain quiet, and I lingered, for there are moments when the most profound justice speaks in silence. Yet I had more to say. It wasn't until I unexpectedly encountered Amanda at the grocery store, 3 weeks post the rent hike, that I truly recognized the extent of my transformation. She was oblivious to my presence. I found myself 2 aisles away, concealed behind a display of bargain cereal boxes. She appeared weary, more than mere fatigue, exhausted. Her hair was pulled back in a haphazard manner, reminiscent of the times she would do so after shedding tears. Her cart sat half empty, primarily affordable essentials. Grains of rice, ovoid wonders, a handful of generic cans. I ought to have turned and left. I did not. I trailed behind her in the store, my heart racing as if I were committing some transgression. She halted before a modest box of mac and cheese, then cast her gaze downward at her phone. A message from Chad, perhaps. Her shoulders drooped. She returned the box to its place. That moment shattered me. It wasn't out of pity that I felt compelled to help her. Rather, it was the memory of that little girl who would rush to me in tears, her knee scraped and her heart heavy. The individual who requested my nightly inspections for creatures lurking beneath her bed. And now, she found herself cohabiting with one. That day, I made my way home and settled onto the couch, enveloped in silence for what felt like hours. I gazed out the window, contemplating how life had transformed us into mere strangers. Yet I reminded myself this was not a form of punishment. This was the outcome, and the consequence had been long awaited. Plans had begun to take shape in my mind. Not merely the structure, but a serene, deliberate game of chess. Each action meticulously planned. Each step is deliberate. Having established the LLC and completed the legal transfer of the property, I commenced the repairs. Initially, they were small, dripping faucets, shattered locks, dancing shadows. Chad remained oblivious. His mind was consumed by the looming rent increase, as he unleashed a torrent of frustration upon the property manager through a barrage of emails, fervently seeking answers. Yet I was familiar with him, understood the mechanics of his ego. He remained steadfast, refusing to budge. He would perceive that as a loss. And what of Amanda? She would trail in his wake as was her custom. Thus I persevered. The property signage has been altered. A security camera has been installed in close proximity to the lobby. The mailboxes for the tenant have been updated. Everything is conducted under the banner of my company, ML Holdings, an abbreviation for Margaret Louise. The identity of the mastermind remained a mystery to all. Then arrived the notification. Yearly evaluations. Compulsory. Chad unleashed a seething reply via the tenant portal, brimming with hollow threats and a sense of self-righteous outrage. It brought a smile to my face as I read it. He was coming apart at the seams, and I found myself merely an observer, untouched and unbothered. In the interim, I found myself transforming into a figure I scarcely knew. I styled my hair in a new way now, more refined attire. I strode with intent. Under a pseudonym, I began attending small business meetups, immersing myself in the world of real estate and forging valuable connections. My past remained unexamined by anyone. They beheld a serene, poised figure, her keen gaze piercing through the atmosphere, with currency readily available in her grasp. The most effective mask is the unspoken truth. As I stepped out of a tenant meeting one morning, I happened upon Amanda and Chad in the parking lot. With my sunglasses firmly in place and my hair elegantly secured in a sleek bun, I held my documents with purpose. Amanda hardly cast a look in my direction. Chad failed to recognize me in the slightest. Later that night, I found myself in the quiet of my living room, a warm cup of tea cradled in my hands, reflecting on the peculiar sensation of gliding past my own child, rendered invisible in that moment, not due to any weakness, but rather because your strength surpasses their recollections. They were blind to my present self, tethered only to the version of me they once manipulated. And that woman had vanished. Amanda's calls persisted. Gentle, tentative messages left on the machine. "Hello, Mother. I was hoping to find a moment to chat with you. It's clear that circumstances have become rather intricate. I chose not to return them, not from a place of cruelty. Yet, it was essential for me that she experienced the emptiness she had brought into existence. Whenever doubt began to seep into my mind, I turned to my mother's diary. I found myself revisiting those words time and time again. Margaret shall remain oblivious. She must remain oblivious. Yet I was aware now, and with that understanding emerged a shield impervious to any assault. I had ceased to be the woman pleading for a place beneath their shelter. I was the one who possessed it. I have always held the conviction that revenge transcends the mere act of settling scores. It revolved around equilibrium, equity devoid of flames, a rectification, not a conflict. Yet, upon reading Chad's email response to the notice of his rent increase, I must confess, a subtle spark of satisfaction ignited within me. Subject: increase in rent? This situation is entirely intolerable. This has to be an error. Our rent is set to triple? That constitutes extortion. I insist on addressing the individual responsible for this establishment. For 3 years, we have resided here without a single instance of tardiness. This is an act of theft. He affixed his signature.
Chad Desharmonnes.
As if his name held a deeper significance. After perusing the email thrice, I proceeded to forward it to my property manager, accompanied by a brief note. Kindly provide your response in accordance with Standard Clause C pertaining to market rate adjustments. There are no unique allowances. Chad was consumed by a fury that went beyond mere anger. He stood there, utterly astonished. His arrogance left no space for the notion that another might surpass him in cunning. He had grown so accustomed to wielding power that the thought of being accountable to an anonymous landlord sent him spiraling into madness. Amanda attempted to reach me once more that very night. The voicemail carried a distinct quality, without any facade. "Mom, I realize you might not be available right now, but I truly need to have a conversation with you. The current situation is quite challenging. Chad is feeling quite distressed. He's unleashing his frustrations on everything around him. We are in the process of unraveling the complexities before us. Oh, how I long for your presence. I do indeed." Her voice trembled at the conclusion. For a fleeting instant, my fingers lingered just above the screen. I might reach out to her again, assuring her that all would be well, that I would set things right. However, I refrained from doing so, for the simple reason that it was not acceptable. I found myself unable to continue mending the chaos she contributed to creating. Amanda had allowed him to cast me aside, as if I were nothing more than an expense they could no longer bear. And now, with the weight of expectation upon her, she recalled the way to reach me by phone? Negative. Allow her to linger in the stillness for just a moment more. In the following week, I granted approval for further enhancements to the property. A fresh coat of exterior paint, the illumination of the corridor, enhancements to the landscape.
Shades rent transcended mere punishments.
It was financing enhancements for the other residents. Such was the irony. All others reaped the rewards. He simply failed to perceive it. He started slipping furious notes beneath the office door. The water pressure is quite disappointing. Refuse accumulates in ever-growing heaps. This is what we are investing in. It's nothing short of absurd. Not a single note received a reply. Amanda ceased to leave messages. Instead, she began to text, brief and concise. "Hello. May we have a conversation? Your presence is truly essential to me." Once more, silence enveloped the space. In the interim, I observed the bank statements arrive one after another. ML Holdings exhibited a sense of stability. Indeed, it is profitable. The remaining tenants exhibited a serene demeanor, demonstrating respect and punctuality in their payments. Only Chad was the source of the noise, and Amanda found herself ensnared in his tempest. However, everything shifted when the quarterly report from the building manager landed in my hands. Enclosed are images of the unit belonging to Chad and Amanda. The bathroom was plagued by mildew. The tiles in the kitchen have succumbed to cracks. Letters accumulating on the floor. They were taking shortcuts, embracing simplicity. I ought to have experienced compassion. Rather, I experienced a sense of clarity. This transcended mere rent. It revolved around power. Chad was spiraling out of control rapidly. Whispers floated through the corridors that he had begun to pick up additional hours at the office. One afternoon, another tenant caught sight of Amanda weeping on the back steps. They were coming apart at the seams, disintegrating from within. Not a single word escaped my lips. That was the section I found myself revisiting time and again. For an eternity, I found myself pleading to be acknowledged, imploring Amanda to recognize what Chad truly was, to witness the transformation she was undergoing by being in his presence. In that moment, they found themselves suffocating beneath the weight of their unspoken words. I observed from a vantage point above. Truly, my new apartment had a view of their courtyard, a distinct structure, elevated level, a more secure community, a perspective forever beyond their reach. I didn't observe them constantly, sufficient to recall that I was not losing my mind. I never envisioned the treachery. Their actions towards me warranted repercussions. And yet, on certain nights, I still found myself perched by the window, phone in hand, gazing at Amanda's final message. Your presence is truly essential to me. The maternal essence within me throbbed with longing. Yet, the woman I had transformed into, she understood that this was merely the dawn of something greater. I had always believed that heartbreak arrived with a cacophony of noise. With a resounding bang, the doors were thrown shut. Words erupted in a cacophony, scenes in the public eye. Yet, the true sorrow? Silence envelopes the surroundings. It arrives as a voicemail left unanswered, a message lingering in silence, left unread. The stillness that lingers between you and the one who once referred to you as mommy. Amanda's calls ceased. The words began to dwindle. Yet, the harm on her side appeared to only intensify. According to the insights I gleaned from the building staff, the atmosphere in their apartment had escalated into overt animosity. Chad was taking jabs at everyone, declining maintenance requests and insisting on superfluous inspections, seeking a target for my frustrations. Amanda, it was said, appeared as though she hadn't rested in days. I found no joy in it. I chose not to celebrate. This was not a matter of witnessing their pain. It revolved around a deeper, more excruciating truth. Observing the daughter I nurtured choose to remain in a cage, all the while proclaiming it as love. On a quiet afternoon, I received a report from my property manager regarding a noise complaint. The neighbor below had caught wind of a fervent dispute, exclaiming loudly, "There's an essence to the experience of relinquishing control. This is entirely on you." Chad had erupted in anger, leaving in a huff and not returning until the dawn of the next day. Amanda remained confined within the apartment throughout the entire night. The lights dimmed. The curtains are drawn shut. I lingered in anticipation, not intended for Chad. In her honor, 2 additional days passed. 2 interminable, weary days. As the sun sank behind the trees one evening, the intercom of my building buzzed to life. "Hello, this is Amanda Harmon speaking. I was curious if Margaret, that is, my mom, resides here?" My heart came to a sudden halt. I hesitated before responding. I merely gazed at the screen, enveloped in a stillness that captures the essence of winter's embrace. With deliberate care, I engaged the door release mechanism. Moments later, a gentle knock resonated through my apartment door. As I opened the door, she stood before me, a mere echo of the girl I once nurtured. Faint, the makeup has smudged. Creases adorned her shirt. She appeared to be 2 decades beyond her actual age. Our gazes locked, lingering in silence for what felt like an eternity. Silence enveloped us. At last, she exhaled deeply. "Hello, Mother." I moved to the side. She entered with a measured pace, as if uncertain of her welcome. The room lay in stillness, broken only by the gentle clink of teacups. As I set about preparing 2 mugs, I refrained from inquiring about her presence. I failed to inquire about her well-being. I placed the tea before her, settled into my seat across the table, and allowed the silence to linger. "I don't know where to start," she murmured, her voice barely rising above a whisper. I remained silent. She cast her gaze downward. "Chad is not. He presents quite the challenge. He is perpetually engulfed in anger, attributes the fault to the rent, accuses me, accuses the neighbor's dog, for heaven's sake." Yet I remained quiet. I believed I was making the correct choice. In those moments when we urged you to depart, it felt more like a request than a decision I could make. My intention was simply to maintain harmony. I sought to avoid further discord. Chad remarked. She hesitated. "He claimed you would remain only if we compelled you to go. And oh, how I loathe myself for acquiescing." I savored a sip of tea. "I miss you," she whispered. Yet I find myself at a loss for a solution. I examined her visage. Each line, each tremor. She sought forgiveness, yet hesitated to voice her plea. Thus, I offered her the sole gift within my grasp: silence. For in certain moments, the quiet can offer more protection than the harsh light of reality. We lingered in that position for almost an hour. She made no request for money. She refrained from seeking assistance. She simply yearned to be close to me, and I allowed her to proceed. As she rose to depart, her hand sought mine. Apologies escaped her lips. She murmured, "For all things." I refrained from echoing those words. I lingered, clasping her hand just a moment longer than she anticipated. She was the one to pull away first. With tears brimming in her eyes, she stepped through the door. I held back my tears. Yet, as soon as the door clicked shut, I collapsed into my chair, cradling the warmth of her teacup in my hands as if it were a lifeline. She had arrived. She gazed into my eyes. At that moment, clarity washed over me. The fissures were at last beginning to reveal themselves. True power, the kind that resonates deeply, requires no elevation of voice to assert its presence. You refrain from slamming doors or issuing threats. With a deft tug of a string here and a gentle closure of a door there, you can observe the ones who once underestimated you begin to writhe in discomfort. What about Chad? He writhed uncomfortably. Following Amanda's visit, an unsettling shadow seemed to envelop the apartment. I didn't require a camera to understand it. One can sense the gradual disintegration of a home if one pays attention with a discerning ear. The maintenance team informed me that Chad had lost his composure, making his way to the management office twice a week, insisting on discovering the identity of the building's owner. He sought names. He yearned for a visage. He sought a scapegoat. That he lacked one, that sent him into a downward spiral. He commenced his excavation. I was certain he would. Chad was not one to embrace defeat in silence. I had observed how he would rummage through Amanda's phone whenever she lingered too long at the store. He scrutinized her receipts, remarking on the duration of her errands. Possessive barely scratched the surface. As he began to delve into the identity behind ML Holdings, I was fully prepared. He began by attempting to research the LLC typical procedure. However, my attorney had submitted all the necessary documents via a privacy trust. None mentioned. There are no leads. Subsequently, the phishing emails arrived for my property manager. Assume the role of a renter. Inquire about the ownership of the building. Careless, in a state of utter despair. He went so far as to contact the title office, masquerading as a lawyer on behalf of another property. The clerk brought it to our attention and reported it directly to us. And when those paths faltered, he delved into the depths of his own being. Amanda. Uncertainty loomed over the situation, as one of the neighbors reached out to the management office, inquiring if someone could look in on the Harmons. She claimed to have heard the shattering of glass. Elevated tones. A type of anger that transcends mere financial burdens. It arises from fear. The maintenance man ascended to that place. Silence lingered with no response in sight. Yet, beyond the door, the sound of Chad's restless pacing and low mutterings reached his ears. Amanda wept. The stillness that followed weighed more than the shouts that had just echoed through the air. A few days later, an unusual envelope found its way to me. There was no name to be found on the exterior. There is no return address provided. Within, a brief message. I am aware of your actions. You may believe yourself to be cunning, yet you fail to instill any fear in me. I will uncover your identity, and when that moment arrives, you will come to regret it. There is no signature. Yet, the handwriting was unmistakable to me. Chad's writing mirrored his speech. Furious, irregular, applying excessive pressure on the page. I lingered, the letter cradled in my hands, my heart pounding in my chest. Not from a place of fear, memory exhausted. It transported me to that moment when he stood in the kitchen, locking eyes with me as if I were nothing more than dirt beneath his feet. The manner in which Amanda positioned herself next to him, not merely silent but actively complicit. What comes next? He was the one reaching for phantoms, gasping in the grip of ambiguity, shouting into the abyss. It possessed a certain beauty, yet it carried an inherent peril. I committed fully. My attorney reached out to the building's security team. Additional surveillance has been put in place. Distinct, lawful, habitual practice. I ensured the safety of the other tenants. The structure would not crumble simply because a single individual was unable to bear the burden of his own malice. And what of Amanda? She never reached out again. However, I learned from the building manager that she had been walking to work. Her vehicle had been disposed of. Their utilities were facing reductions. Dim the lights by PM. On certain nights, the warmth eludes me. The fissures extended beyond the confines of their relationship. They found themselves in a struggle for survival. And yet, amidst it all, I maintained my distance. This was not a matter of vengeance. The matter at hand revolved around resolution, allowing Chad's universe to contract until he came to understand the true extent of his insignificance. Allowing Amanda to make the choice. Would she remain within the confines of the cage, or discover the key I had set right before her eyes? I sensed that she was not quite prepared, yet the walls seemed to constrict around me. Secrets possess an uncanny ability to seep through the smallest of fissures. The knock on my door that night took me by surprise. The stillness had lingered for days on end. There have been no communications from management. Amanda has not left any voicemails. Ceased the veiled menaces. Only quietude, a presence that resembles a tempest lurking on the horizon, poised and patient. Yet when the knock arrived, gentle and unhurried, a constriction gripped my chest. I pushed the door open. Amanda lingered in that moment, a grocery bag held tightly against her chest, as if it were the sole force sustaining her balance. Her eyes glowed with a crimson hue, and her lips parted. Yet nothing emerged. She appeared as though she had exhausted her vocabulary days prior. I moved aside. She entered with a deliberate slowness. Water cascades onto the hardwood floor, each drop echoing softly in the stillness. I offered her a towel. In silence, we shifted our positions. I set the kettle to heat, filled 2 mugs with soothing chamomile tea. She perched on the edge of the couch, as if reluctant to linger for too long. As if she were unworthy of it. Perhaps she did not. She gazed contemplatively into her cup. Hollow eyes. He is not the person I believed him to be, she finally admitted. I remained silent. I suppose I was aware. A fragment of my being had always been aware. Yet, I reassured myself that it was merely stress. He simply required some encouragement, that if I exercised patience, he would eventually return. Yet I remained silent. She lifted her gaze, her voice quivering. He believes that we are being targeted by someone. He is consumed by it. He has been perusing my phone, my correspondence. Just last week, he trailed me to my workplace. He claimed he was ensuring my non-involvement. A tremor coursed through her being. And not from the chill. He inquired whether I was concealing anything. Should you find yourself concealing a secret? That took my breath away. She turned away, leaving the question hanging in the air. I informed him that I hadn't conversed with you in weeks. I was completely unaware of your whereabouts. She hesitated, yet that was a falsehood. Our gazes intertwined for the very first time. Your building caught my attention in a recent security notice. The same management company. I have come to a realization. It was not difficult. Certainly it was not. Amanda possessed a keen intellect. It had always been that way, yet intelligence does not always equate to courage. At that moment, She resembled a person who had at last awakened to the truth and despised the reflection before her. I remained silent. Not at this moment. I miss you, she whispered, yet I find myself at a loss for how to navigate your presence now. My grip on the mug grew firmer. You left, she said, her voice trembling, and I allowed it. I allowed him to cast you aside. At last I found my voice. Absolutely not, Amanda. You chose not to allow him. You stood by his side. That brought her to a standstill. She fluttered her eyelashes. Her lips parted slightly, as if she were on the verge of denial, in order to protect her own interests. Yet there remained nothing to protect. I rose to my feet. I approached the window, gazed into the depths of the night. I pleaded for your voice that night. I confessed, merely a single word. Only one. Yet you chose to remain silent. From behind, I caught the sound of her breath escaping. A soft, fractured whisper. I never imagined it would come to this, she remarked. I believed I could handle him. One cannot govern a man in such a manner, I remarked gently. You endure him, or you part ways with him. Her silence lingered. She was under no obligation to. We lingered in silence for what felt like an eternity. Two women bound by blood yet devoid of trust. Not at this moment, perhaps not at all. As she rose to depart, she placed the mug down with deliberate care. Her eyes glistened with the weight of unshed tears. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I simply sought to recall the sensation of safety. I escorted her to the threshold. She hesitated. She suddenly pivoted and enveloped me in her embrace. Initially, I held back from returning the embrace, so I proceeded to do just that, yet softly, with careful consideration, as if one were grasping at a fleeting memory, striving to keep it from slipping away. As she withdrew, no farewell passed her lips. She cast a final glance in my direction and departed. As the door clicked shut behind her, a profound change stirred within my chest. Not absolution, not at this moment. Yet, there exists the slightest glimmer of a possibility that could eventually blossom into it, should she choose to allow it. On a Tuesday morning, the invitation was dispatched. Silently, in a professional manner, in silence, a gathering of tenants to deliberate on forthcoming renovations of the building. The gathering is set to take place in the common room next week. Attendance is required. Inquiries are encouraged. I was certain that Chad would be present. I was certain he would find it impossible to say no. He sought a name.
À visage.
A figure to blame. Unbeknownst to him, he was about to step directly into the grasp of the woman he had cast aside, as if she were nothing more than a faulty device. On the day of the meeting, I made sure to arrive ahead of time. Clad in a charcoal gray blazer paired with dark jeans, I stepped out with an air of understated elegance. Graceful, transformed beyond recognition, soft waves of hair cascaded gently over my shoulders. I bore no resemblance to the woman who once pleaded for a fragment of dignity at Amanda's kitchen table. The common room gradually came to life. Tenants began to arrive one by one. There exists a certain curiosity. Others were irritated, utterly apathetic. And then Chad arrived. He burst through the door, exuding the confidence of someone ready for a showdown. Amanda followed him closely, almost like a shadow. He averted his gaze. They failed to see me. He spotted the property manager at the entrance and approached him directly. Where could she be? He insisted. I would like to speak with the individual responsible. On this day, the manager maintained a composed demeanor. Every question will be answered during the presentation. Chad let out a derisive laugh. Amanda cast her gaze downward, her eyes resting on her shoes. I lingered in the shadows, a quiet observer. The presentation commenced. Regular notifications, enhancements, chronologies, a fresh approach to security measures, the refreshed landscaping, the enhanced insulation, concrete adjustments, wise choices, all financed in part by the very rent that Chad had so vehemently opposed. At that moment, the manager hesitated. We extend our gratitude to ML Holdings for their dedication to rejuvenating the property and placing tenant comfort at the forefront of their efforts. The proprietor is present today. Does anyone have any questions? I rose to my feet. The room spun around. I made my way deliberately toward the front. Serene, unwavering, with each step, a subtle rhythm echoes within my chest. Chad's expression contorted in bewilderment. Then came the disbelief. Amanda's lips parted in astonishment. I pivoted towards the room. "Good evening," I remarked. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Margaret. I hold the title of owner for this building." The silence was palpable, as if even the faintest sound would shatter the stillness. Chad rose abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor beneath him. "And you?" This is a humorous quip. "What type of game is this?" My gaze fell upon him, gazed intently at him, and beheld the fissures he had endeavored to conceal. The perspiration clung to the nape of his neck, the swelling beneath his eyes, the overwhelming surge of anxiety.
No cantes.
I spoke in a gentle whisper, merely a matter of business. He advanced a step. "This was manipulated by you. All along, you were the one orchestrating this. Your decision to increase our rent has been noted. You seek to bring about our downfall." I stood firm. "I provided you with shelter. I have implemented enhancements. I ensured that each tenant received the same level of care and consideration. I did not allow myself to forget." He parted his lips to utter a word. Yet I redirected my attention to the gathering. "I welcome any questions regarding the changes or improvements and will gladly address them following the meeting. My sincere gratitude to you." I moved to the side. The meeting continued, yet the tension lingered in the atmosphere. Chad remained standing. He remained rooted to the spot, shaking with rage. Amanda perched with her hands intertwined firmly in her lap, glistening eyes wide open. As the meeting drew to a close, tenants approached me, extending their hands in gratitude, inquiring with curiosity, and expressing their thanks. There were whispers of suspicion. Many were blissfully unaware. Chad lingered in the silence, biding his time until the last person departed the room. He strode purposefully in my direction. "Do you truly believe you've emerged victorious?" He let out a sharp hiss. "However, this amounts to nothing. An adversary has been forged." My gaze fixed upon him. Gaze steady. "Absolutely not, Chad. I created nothing." "You did indeed. The moment you gazed into my eyes and made me feel insignificant." Amanda interposed herself between us. "Chad, cease." He gazed at her, disbelief etched across his features. "What did you just—" "I commanded you to stop." She raised her voice, repeating it with greater intensity this time. "She is not your adversary. She was never that. Who are you?" He gazed at her as if she had dealt him a blow. Indeed, she had, in a manner of speaking. Amanda faced me, her voice quivering with emotion. "I was unaware. I truly swear. Concerning the structure, the funds, any of it." I gave a slight nod. "I am aware. Why was I not informed? It was something you simply had to witness, not merely listen to it." She fought to hold back her tears. Chad let out a derisive laugh, retreating a step. "You both are perfectly matched for one another."
No, irraplia sufli.
"She is worthy of more." With a deliberate motion, I pivoted and departed. For the first time since that dreadful evening in their kitchen, I sensed a change stirring within me. Not vengeance, lack of fulfillment, yet the essence of power. Silence, steadfast, completely and wholly my own. Amanda appeared at my doorstep once more, just 4 days later. This time, she grasped something in her hands that sent my knees trembling the moment I laid eyes on it.
Atome.
Worn leather. The corner is frayed, the spine teetering on the brink of collapse. The diary of my mother. Silently, I pushed the door open. She entered, her eyes alight with wonder. Her breath trembled. "I discovered it tucked away in my closet," she remarked. "During my most recent visit, it seems you may have forgotten it." She set it down on the coffee table as if it were a cherished relic. "Indeed, it was for me. I have perused it." My heart came to a standstill. I had no intention of intruding. She hurried. Yet her handwriting was unmistakable to me. I found myself searching for something that resonated, something that truly made sense. Silence descended upon us, enveloping the space like a heavy curtain. "Weighty. Yet, I had no idea about Harold Sterling," she murmured softly. or perhaps the funds, or the faith, or any part of it. I gave a single nod. Gradually, I was unaware as well. Only when I found myself with nothing left to lose. Her voice trembled. Mother, why was I not informed? What made you allow me to think you were powerless? I gazed into her eyes, and for once she held his gaze. Due to my utter helplessness, when you shut the door behind you that night, I found myself without a plan. I found myself without any funds. I found myself without a sanctuary, a space where my tears could flow freely, unbothered by the interruptions of others urging me to quiet my sorrow. Amanda flinched. It was during my darkest hour that I stumbled upon the diary, a time when I was reduced to counting coins just to afford a meal. When a week had passed without a single conversation, the diary in question, it revealed not only my identity, it served as a poignant reminder of my significance, that my mother loved me in ways beyond mere affection. She battled on my behalf, in hushed stillness, never able to reveal it. Amanda took a seat, fingers tightly intertwined in her lap. I'm uncertain how I transformed into the kind of daughter capable of such actions. I find myself pondering that question repeatedly. Repeatedly, I strolled over to the window, gazed out at the street below, the soft murmur of existence flowing onward. It wasn't an instantaneous transformation into her everything, I remarked. It was a series of subtle decisions, allowing matters to drift away, opting for tranquility instead of reality. To believe in love was to embrace loyalty. Even in the midst of pain, she rose to her feet and made her way toward me. I have departed from him. The words detonated in the atmosphere, reverberating with explosive force. He attempted to sift through my belongings once more, the device that accompanies me on my journeys through the digital realm. My satchel. I firmly expressed my refusal to him. That was the moment. With a piercing scream, he hastily gathered his belongings into a bag and departed. He promised he would return. The following day, I took the initiative to change the locks. Stunned, I turned to her. I don't know who I am without him, she confessed, with a quiver in the voice. Yet I would prefer to uncover the truth than continue fading away. A hush enveloped the space between us, heavy with all the words left unspoken. She cast her gaze upon the diary. Your experience was not warranted by my actions. Our actions unfolded. While I may not be able to resolve that, my desire to attempt it remains strong. I made my way back to her, each step deliberate and unhurried. He settled himself next to her. Once, I found myself lost in dreams of hearing those very words, I confessed. Yet, uttering those words now does nothing to mend what has already transpired. It is rewritten by them. Her gaze met mine, a flicker of confusion dancing in her eyes. I grasped her hand with a tender touch. Now you behold me. That transforms the entire landscape. We lingered in each other's company for what felt like an eternity. A silence that soothes rather than stings, offering a balm for the soul. The kind that emerges once truth has finally spoken its piece. Before Amanda departed that evening, she lingered at the threshold. You didn't raise me to be weak, she declared. I momentarily overlooked the depth of your strength. A gentle smile graced my lips. No, I stated firmly. You remembered. You simply ceased your search. At that moment, she perceived it all. Not merely the person I had transformed into, but the essence of who I had always been. As the email from Chad landed in my inbox, I hesitated, nearly choosing to leave it unopened. The mere sight of the subject line sent a wave of unease through me. It's time for a conversation. At this moment, I have perused it, gradually, with great care. His words were sharp, frantic, and saturated with desperation. I possess all knowledge concerning the structure. Gone. Concerning the matter of inheritance. Concerning your small secret involving Sterling. Do you believe yourself to be quite astute? Do you truly believe you can shatter my existence and stroll away with a grin? Allow me to clarify a point. If this is not reversed, I will take my concerns to the media. Your name, the clandestine liaison of your mother. All things, let us observe the resilience of your esteemed reputation when the truth about your family's origins comes to light. My gaze lingered on the screen, enveloped in a profound silence that left me utterly speechless. At last, he had woven together the threads of understanding. In some way, whether through Amanda's revelations or his own relentless pursuit, he had unearthed the truth. Yet, fear eluded me, for I had meticulously orchestrated this moment from the very day I acquired the building. The email has been forwarded to my attorney. By the following morning, Chad found himself in possession of a cease and desist letter. Within its pages lay a meticulous account of every menacing communication he had dispatched to the property office, the forged documents he attempted to present under the guise of a fictitious law firm, and the altered emails we had discreetly traced back to his IP address. Tenant grievances echoed through the halls, accompanied by records of maintenance sabotage and audio snippets capturing his tirades in the communal areas of the building. There was no necessity for us to pursue criminal charges. A single defamation and harassment lawsuit sufficed. He was in a state of panic, a fact I confirmed when Amanda reached out to me 2 days later. "He's gone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Everything was neatly packed away while I was at work. He left a note, declaring that he was being pursued. He claimed you shattered his existence. He brought about his own downfall." I spoke in a hushed tone. Amanda remained quiet. "My sincerest apologies." Once more, he believed he was entitled to my silence. "You were filled with fear," I responded. "I have experienced that myself. Fear diminishes your presence. Yet, remaining in that state is not a necessity." It didn't take long for Chad to seek his revenge. Sharing ambiguous outbursts on social platforms, suggesting dishonesty, deceit, he refrained from revealing identities. He lacked the means to do so. Not after the second letter from my attorney warned of legal repercussions for every word he put to print. He fell into silence after that, at least in the public eye. In the depths of his mind, he understood that the moment he sent her away, burdened with 2 suitcases and a weary expression, would forever linger in his memory. He now possessed the roof above him, the lease in his name, and the keys to every door he had once slammed shut on me. Amanda, in contrast, was undergoing a remarkable transformation. She departed from the unit within a month, discovered a quaint studio in close proximity to her workplace, embarked on the journey of therapy, enrolled in a community art class. She went so far as to create a painting just for me, a representation of a phoenix, adorned in deep reds and shimmering golds. I suspended it above my fireplace. Our conversations have become more frequent, not on every occasion. Yet, when we finally did, it was undeniably real. Truthful. Enough with the charades. An envelope contained the final piece of the puzzle. Yet another letter. This particular piece hails from Mr. Goldstein. "Well done, Margaret. The transfer of the building has been officially completed. The last tenants have finalized their new agreements. The legal matter concerning Mr. Harmon has concluded with a favorable outcome for you. You now have the liberty to sell, hold, or restructure according to your preferences." With meticulous care, I folded the letter. I pressed it close to my heart. This transcended mere finances, possessions, or the desire for retribution. This was a matter of truth, concerning the restoration of my identity, the tale of my journey, the essence of my power. The following morning, I reached out to a realtor. I stood on the brink of concluding the final chapter, and unlocked the threshold to a life I was no longer compelled to endure. At last, I could embrace it fully. According to my own conditions, the building was sold in the waning days of spring. On a radiant, cloudless Tuesday, the last of the paperwork was signed.
No celebration.
Without any formalities. Only the soft, solitary click of a pen echoes in the stillness. A resolute handshake, the burden of 3 years steeped in sorrow, treachery, and unspoken words. At last, it is being released from my burdens. The funds were transferred to my account the following day. Yet I chose not to celebrate. I opted to write a check instead. A substantial one. 50% of the proceeds were directed towards a local shelter dedicated to supporting women and children in times of crisis. It's the sort of place I longed to discover on that night when I found myself on the curb, 2 suitcases in hand and no one to reach out to. I requested that they construct a wing in honor of my mother, the Eleanor House, It was my tribute to the woman who bestowed upon me both resilience and quietude, who concealed a lifetime of secrets, allowing me to unearth the truth and transform into something greater than the world's expectations. What about the other half? I utilized it to purchase a modest home. It lacked extravagance. A delightful two-bedroom nestled on the very street where my childhood unfolded in Cedar Park. Majestic oak trees stand sentinel in the front yard. A swing on the porch. Ample room for tranquility, for restoration, for cultivating tomatoes should the whim ever strike me. On the day of my arrival, Amanda lent her hands to assist with the boxes. Her words were few. I did not either. Once we had completed the unpacking, she settled next to me on the porch swing. Her legs were tucked beneath her. Her eyes roamed the street, as if searching for the girl she once was. I recall the days I rode my bike here, she murmured gently. Before the complexities unfolded, I gave a nod. I assured her that she had always been safe here. I had forgotten how that felt, she whispered. Our conversation did not touch upon Chad. There was no necessity for that. The final pages of his chapter turned quietly, lacking any grand finale. Only silence. He vanished into the embrace of an unfamiliar city. A fresh opportunity awaits, most likely another fabrication. However, this occurred only after he affixed his signature to a non-disclosure agreement and discreetly retracted his threats. What he desired most was to avoid yet another legal confrontation, or even more dreadfully, for the world to uncover the reality of his being. He had become a specter, lingering in the shadows of memory. Amanda lingered for dinner. We prepared grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, just as we did in her childhood. She chuckled as she scorched one side. Her attempt to blame the pan made me chuckle. It marked the first genuine laughter we had exchanged in years. That evening, once she had departed, I found myself at the window, cradling a cup of tea in my hands, gazing at the moonlight cascading over the front lawn. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I uttered the words aloud. I forgive you, not for Amanda, for my own reflection, for that was the most challenging aspect, not emerging from the embers, yet discovering that I was never the flame they sought to snuff out. I was the ember they failed to recognize. They imparted the lesson that silence equated to vulnerability. Yet, I discovered how to turn it into a formidable tool. They attempted to wipe me from existence, and I transformed into an unforgettable presence in their lives. I settled onto the couch, opened the diary for one final perusal, and carefully tucked a note within its pages for Amanda to discover in the future. Your worth is not dependent on their love. Your strength does not require their validation. The only thing you truly require is the truth. And always, always remember the essence of your being. The clock whispered its gentle rhythm in the background. The warmth of my tea slipped away, leaving only a chill in my hands. Yet what of my heart? The warmth had finally arrived. There was no need for me to raise my voice. Victory was not a necessity for me. I simply had to embrace my true self, the person I was meant to be all along. At long last, I had returned to the place I could call home. I appreciate your attention. Remember to subscribe, and we invite you to share your story in the comments below. Your voice holds significance.